Be grateful for whoever comes, for each has been sent as a guide from the beyond. One of my favorite quotes by the enlightened poet and Sufi master, Rumi. But what does it mean exactly? Well, that, my friends, is what we're going to be discussing in today's episode. So when our beloved Rumi uttered those words, he was speaking from what he was seeing from his single eye, from his third eye, from his eye of wisdom, because Rumi definitely attained a higher level of consciousness, which he attained to by his lifelong practice of devotion, humility, and unconditional love. And as mentioned in the previous episode, when one practices non-judgment and humility, one's consciousness level rises and one is able to see more and more and more through the illusion of separation. And so when our beloved Rumi uttered those words, what he was saying was, every single human being in our life is a guide sent from the beyond. What does he mean by that? Beyond what? Beyond the veil of illusion. The veil of illusion is that we are people and we have our roles, right? I'm David, I'm a certain age, I'm a certain race, nationality, religion, I have a certain profession, I have a certain personality type, which is the greatest illusion is the personality, which comes from the word persona, which means mask, because that's what it is. Because we are souls, aka beings of light, wearing these masks of personas, personalities, so therefore we are playing roles without realizing it, right? That's the whole human game. That's the whole game we're playing here on this earth. Forgetting who we really are, divine beings of light, and taking on these personas and these egos so that we can have this human experience. And this human experience is beautifully orchestrated. It's literally like a beautifully written movie or play. And it's written by us, except we don't remember that we wrote it. But the whole challenge is to remember, is to come to a remembrance, to taste, start to get a taste of our true divine nature and start to slowly but surely remember that it is a game, that it is a movie or a play, and that none of this is actually real, but only relatively real for the divine purpose of the evolution and growth of our souls. And so when Rumi said, be grateful for those who come, meaning everyone in your life, even the people, especially the people that trigger us because they have been sent as a guide from beyond the veil of illusion. So I said, especially those who trigger us, because those are the ones that are most valuable. That sounds crazy, I know, but without them, we wouldn't know that these triggers exist inside of us. And if we're not aware of these triggers, which are actually unhealed wounds in our consciousness, there's no way that we can evolve and spiritually ascend. Yes, you can. There are spiritual traditions that where you can go into a mountain somewhere or in a cave and spend the rest of your life in meditation and ascend spiritually that way. But that takes a lot longer than the process of evolving spiritually while in a human interaction and human interplay in human society. Because if we know anything about humans, they're very irritating, but these irritating humans are low-key blessings in disguise, Because if we acknowledge the fact that these are catalysts, we would be grateful, as Rumi said. If we acknowledge the irritation that arises in us from these irritating people, and understand that this irritation is coming from an unhealed wound, and do some introspection and try to figure out, where is this irritation? Why am I getting irritated at this person? We will come to see that it is coming from an unhealed wound. And if we heal that wound, then people won't appear so irritating anymore, because they're only a reflection of what's happening inside of us. This is why every spiritual tradition leads us within, right? Go within. The kingdom of heaven is within, 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 within. And believe me, I know that this is much easier said than done. I get irritated at people almost on a daily basis, even though I know this knowledge. However, knowing the knowledge is a lot better than not knowing it, because once you have tools, it's easier to do the work, the inner work, than if you don't have these tools. And I can definitely say that my perspective and understanding and experience has gotten better with this knowledge versus without it. And hopefully it'll do the same for you. For this is the whole purpose of my channel, and why I started it, and why I'm here talking into my iPhone camera, because I want to share this knowledge, because I find it helpful and useful in my life, and hope that some people out there will find it useful and helpful as well. So with that being said, let's dive a little bit deeper into the quote. What does that mean exactly when he said has been sent? Sent from where and by who? So this is where it gets interesting. There's something that's known as soul contracts, and this is something that my grandfather partially taught me about. The part that my grandfather taught me about soul contracts is the part that he was made aware of. When people would come to see him for treatment, there have been many times that he could not help them, because the energy that he would channel would not be given to him. He would not be allowed to channel that energy for that particular person or for particular people. And he would be told by his angels or his guides that this person is supposed to go through what they're going through with their ailment, with their illness, for it is part of their soul contract, meaning that person's soul agreed to go through this illness, through this sickness, and see it through to the end, even if it results in death. And so my grandfather, being a channel for healing energy and somebody who works with angels, and angels are our helpers, our messengers, our guides from behind the veil, from the beyond. And they have full awareness of a soul's human experience and their contract. So if a person will come to my grandfather and they would see that this is part of the contract, they do not allow my grandfather to be the channel for this energy, because it would violate that soul's contract, which is a no-no on the other side. And of course, this was very heartbreaking for my grandfather, especially because a lot of people would go to him, and to people like him in general, when it would be the last resort. You know, many people, especially in society, in the modern world, they rely on medicine and conventional medicine. And when that fails, then they seek alternatives. And it's very devastating that when, conventional medicine tells you it's not looking good, and you try alternative, it's metaphysical, spiritual kind of healing modalities, and the person you go to says, "I'm sorry, but I can't help you." That's devastating for the patient as well as to the practitioner. But my grandfather said eventually, over some time, he came to understand that it is for the best, and there is a higher reason and purpose for everything, and that nobody really dies. We just end one experience and move on to another. Our souls create a blueprint for the experience that it wants to have, or that it's going to have as the human prior to incarnating. And this contract and blueprint entails everything, every possible detail. Not everything is set in stone from what I understand, but there are parameters in which things will happen in your life, in your human experience. And so part of that contract or blueprint are the other human souls that you're going to have interactions with. And that includes your family. So yes, we actually did from the other side pick and choose our family. People always say, oh, you don't get to choose your family. On the metaphysical, spiritual level, you do. You literally choose your family. And many people would think, there's no way. Why would I choose, these parents? Why would I choose to have this mom or this dad or this, uncle or these people? They did certain things to me. Look at the way they treated me. Why would I choose that? Right? It's a very rational thing to contemplate and to ask. And the answer is, it's not something that we can really totally comprehend unless we look at it from a higher perspective. And by that I mean from the perspective of the soul. If we take a step back, and this isn't easy, again, this is something easier said than done, but it can be done in a state of complete humility, in a state of meditation, in a state of acceptance. We can in fact go inward and ask, if I actually am a soul and I'm having this temporary human experience, why would I, in my infinite wisdom, choose this life, choose this particular set of circumstances, this particular family? And I promise you, if you do this introspection, answers will be given to you. Because almost always, if not always, our circumstances are trying to teach us forgiveness, because the soul yearns to remember its true divine and holy essence while in human form, and that cannot be possible unless the heart, which, as we know from our previous episode, the access point of our soul is opened. And our hearts cannot open unless we forgive, because carrying resentment closes the heart and keeps it closed. And so again, this is why masters such as Yeshua and many, many, many other masters have emphasized forgiveness and compassion, for it is a requirement to open the heart. And our souls want to experience more and more of the divinity that they are. And the way to do that is to go through these trials and tribulations and adversity and be able to forgive them. Nothing opens the heart as much as that. Nothing brings about that peace, that sense of peace, inner peace that we all long for than that. And so when Rumi said, be grateful for whoever comes, for they have been sent from the beyond as a guide, he meant that they are an opportunity, a golden opportunity for us to forgive and to therefore open our hearts and evolve and remember and feel our divine essence. So if we actually got to experience that open-heartedness, that sense of peace and tranquility and light inside of ourselves, thanks to a person who irritated us and showed us something we needed to heal inside of ourselves, we would be grateful to that person, because if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't have gotten here. And that's why Yeshua said, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Imagine that. I mean, You gotta be a true master to be able to say that while you're being nailed to a cross. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. That's how clearly and sharply he saw through the illusion. That's how much he was free of the illusion, and how he dwelled in the kingdom, which he spoke of often. In the kingdom of heaven, in the reality of oneness, in the reality that actually exists, meaning being able to see and know by direct experience that every single person is a soul, is a spark of God in the temporary state of amnesia, having a human experience and completely unaware of their true nature and their true essence. And so if they cause harm to you, even by beating you and nailing you to a cross, it's because they're not aware of who they actually are. And you only see who they actually are. That's all he saw. Only from that kind of a perspective and state of consciousness can you utter such words. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. So he definitely set an example for all of us, for all of humanity, for what we all have the potential to become. As he himself said, all the things that I can do, all the works that I do. First of all, he gave all credit to God and said, it is not I who does these works, but my Father through me. And second of all, he said, you too shall do these kinds of works and even greater works than these, because the more we awaken to our true essence, the more these kinds of miraculous works and workings and healings and things like that he did, more of these things just flow through naturally, because it is part of who we really are. We are miraculous beings. We are pieces of God. So the next time you're in the presence of an irritating human and they're getting under your skin, try to remember, this is a guide. This is a being of light, a soul, a child of God, clothed and cloaked in the human form, playing a role which I agreed to, so that they can show me what I need to heal inside myself. Thank you for watching and listening to today's episode. I'll see you guys in the next one. God bless.